I think that's what the healing journey shows us, that there is free will. Because by healing and having this awareness, we can then quantum leap into new realities.
Yeah.
And at the same time, did our soul priorly choose that we were going to have that healing? Because we could take the super quantum perspective of like, we're in the matrix, and it's like, there is this like higher form of consciousness that's like playing us like video games, and we think we're making these decisions and we're not. So even like the moment that you had the healing and the moment that you had the realization, the moment you had the conversation, all of that was predetermined on this pathway, and it could be that. However, the way that it's designed is to make us at least feel that we have a free will. So I think if it's designed to make us feel that we have a free will, it's important to play into it and to play into the human experience, because if I take this really detracted view of life, then I'm not really living anymore.
Just flow, surrender, let go. Just flow, surrender, let go. Just flow, surrender, let go. I'm the one I've been waiting for. Just flow, surrender, let go. Just flow, surrender, let go. Just flow, surrender, let go. I'm the one I've been waiting for.
And before we get into this conversation, I would love if you would hit subscribe on this podcast. This is the best way for you to stay tuned on future episodes, and it helps raise the vibration of the planet. So wherever you're listening to this podcast, hit subscribe and we'll keep the good juju flowing. Welcome back to the High Self Podcast. My name is Sahara Rose, ancient soul, modern body, here to make spirituality modern, fun, relatable, sexy, and also to bring mysticism back to the mainstream, because let's be real, our ancestors were sitting underneath the stars, contemplating life, wondering why we are here in this crazy human planet and what is good and evil. But for some reason, we just stopped asking. And so I'm here to ask those questions and maybe, just maybe, get the answers. So here I am, like Indiana Jones of consciousness. Let's go. That was actually not that bad of an accent. So these are our episodes where I bring on my bestie, Rosie, where we talk about what we know nothing about, human consciousness. So in today's conversation, we are talking about, is there a highest timeline? When we talk about timeline, it's like, is there a destiny? Is there a pathway that your soul chose prior to incarnation that is optimal for you? Or is it merely all just free will? So it's the big conversation, free will, destiny. Are our souls choosing this human experience or not? Where is it all coming from? So without further ado, let's dive in. Rosie, Rosemary, sweet as cherry.
I feel like we need to have some tea time.
We need to.
These are little Easter eggs that hopefully people get.
Once I come back from London, I'll be full of tea. I'll bring you some Earl Grey.
Oh, thank you.
I think I'm going to do this podcast in a British accent, actually.
Are you really?
I will.
Okay.
I'm just going to add a layer of intelligence to it,
It makes you feel a little bit more, but like, is it a little or a little?
So you can be posh and be a little, or water bottle.
Water bottle?
Or you can be cogny, like water bottle, a little. Or you can be fat bastard, a water bottle. So it really just depends where we want to take this conversation. I mean, even every Spice Girl had a different one. So.
Oh, that's right. Look at you. You really studied this.
I have. I'm ready for it.
By the way, that intro was probably my favorite intro of all time.
This is what happens when you're on the 5th hour of podcasting for the day. You lose your fucking mind. So let's get into it. Is this destiny? Is this free will? What the fuck's going on?
This is going to be one of those blooper ones. We're going to have a lot of those.
Except I don't edit anything out.
Great. After having this conversation... I've decided I'm going to agree with you. No, just kidding. I have a hard time believing that I'm living this experience and somebody somehow already predetermined the whole experience and what am I doing here then? You know what I mean? Like, what is the purpose of making any kind of choice? Because I mean, man, if we really get down to
into it, get nihilistic with us.
If we get into it,
bring out the inner goth girl. Let's see it.
Are we really making a choice at all? We're given choices. We're given the options. So are we actually making a choice?
She flipped.
Yeah. Are we actually making a choice? I don't know. Is there free will?
Is there such thing as choice?
I think there is. Also, I just have a hard time believing that some of us really choose prior to coming down to this realm, this experience.
This party.
Yeah. I think that we do predetermine communities we're coming into, people in our lives. But I still feel like there is a mystery, like there is no real set path. I really do believe that it's like I could have chosen to be, a little hoodlum and be a gangbanger and have 15 kids and stay in East LA and live that life or end up in jail, I could have very easily chosen that path, but that wasn't the path that I chose. And even as a child internally, I knew that that wasn't going to be the path. Even though externally, everybody, I was like the fuck up of the family. Everybody always talked shit about me. I'd walk into a room and my little goth self would walk in with my docs and my ripped up jeans and my black, jet black hair. And people were, I was the oddball, I was the odd person in the whole family unit. But even then, I knew that that wasn't who I was. So but it was a small whisper. It wasn't like I knew, because there was still a lot of doubt. There was still a lot of insecurity. But there was this internal knowing that that wasn't the path. However, that was as much as I knew at that moment.
And that's how mysteries are. You can't know the full mystery at the time. You get what you're ready for.
Right. But so then what is this idea of having a predestined path? I guess explain to me what the definition of having a predestined path is.
So I don't believe that there's just like this destined path that no matter what you do, this is just what's going to happen. And there's zero free will. I've thought of that reality sometimes of like, could that be the truth? And I'm like, again, the video game might have been made that my free will, I just think I have it and it's really not. But then I'm like, there are people who choose to awaken and people who choose not to. And it's like, why is that? Why is it that me and my brother grew up in the exact same household, the same everything, but one of us chose this path of awakening, the other one did not? Like, why is that? And I think that's where free will comes. So the way that I see it is our souls chose a siddhi, which is like the highest expression of like, this is who you can be in this lifetime. This is what you're capable of in your career, in your relationships, in your expression, in your liberation. These are the core themes of your life. And now your soul is going to choose the astrology and the human design and even the parents and the obstacles and the country you live in and the time that you live in and the culture that you're a part of, all of these things to support and specify this expression that your soul. And I think ultimately all of our souls are here to raise consciousness in our own unique way. Some of them are more like magna, like for the masses, like an Oprah. And some of them are really just like small, like really meant to affect a few people in our lives. And I think all of this, again, is part of our soul's unique plan prior to incarnation. I love the movie Soul, that like Disney. I think they did an impeccable job with that. And this is also a Vedic kind of like philosophy as well. But just because you have that, so in the Vedas, they call this your dharma, your soul's purpose, which isn't just a job, but it's like your full the frequency, the domino piece that only you can be. But that doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get there. I can't say, well, this is my destiny, so I'm going to sit back and do nothing. It's like every single moment I have a choice. Am I going to choose the higher path, the path that's the whisper? It might mean going into my fears sometimes. Sometimes it's actually stepping away from my fears. And that's another conversation we could have of when is it the voice of intuition versus fear. But I believe this lifetime is like, how close can we get to that pinnacle? And every single moment, it's like we have our lower side, our lower brain that's like, do the survival thing, do the revenge thing, do the self-serving thing. And then we have that other side of us that sees things in a bigger picture, and it's a dance, So I would say, yes, we have a destined path, but we have the free will to whether we're going to get there or not.
Yeah, so it's you are the acorn that has the potential to become an oak tree.
Right.
So it's that's the idea.
And in this lifetime, you don't even know, are you an oak tree or a palm tree or a pomegranate tree or this? Yeah. So it's like also that seed. Questioning. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a seed. What are you going to be?
You're a seed. And you're like, I've only seen other seeds. I've never even seen a tree. I've heard that we are supposed to turn into trees. I've never seen one. I don't even know what type of tree I am. Also, the type of tree that I am is changing over time. That right now I'm a pomegranate one, but it seems like I'm turning into an oak and it's like, we're all hybrids.
Yeah. Am I a grapefruit tree? Am I even a tree? What if I'm just a blade of grass?
And none, exactly. Maybe I'm actually a bird and I think this is a seed, but it's an egg. It's like it could go so many different ways.
We're really going there today.
So to me, what I've recognized in my life is there are situations that have happened that I believe, as difficult as they were, my soul chose them to wake me up. And it's the level that I needed in the way that I needed to step into my full expression. And what I have found is it's largely your greatest fear. Because that's where there's the most polarity, the most energy. So if I'm super afraid of losing my job and being broke, and that's my biggest fear, that's what keeps me up at night. Everyone in my family has experienced poverty, and like that's the thing for me. Likely, I'm going to have to go into that experience to realize that I am not just that. I am not just my money, and I can make myself, back up. And as long as this remains a fear, it actually is inevitable for it to happen. For me, I don't believe in divorce. For me, it was a belief system thing. Persians do not get divorced. And for me, I needed to have a situation that happened that I had to get a divorce because I needed to go into that fear because I held a lot of energy towards it to realize, oh, that doesn't make you broken or something is wrong. And there's actually higher forms of liberation on the other side. Even in my younger 20s, I didn't realize how much I lived for my parents' approval. I had to be disowned by my dad to realize I can no longer live for someone else's approval. I've completely lost it. So it's kind of like this video game that like you have to go into your ultimate fear to realize that it was just a feather bed on the other side.
What is your thoughts on this whole idea that we're supposed to go into what we fear? Because I'll give you an example. It's like, if my fear is being alone, does that mean that I need to dissolve my 20-year happy relationship because that's my fear?
I wanna lick you from your head to your toes, and I wanna move from the bed down to the floor, and I wanna you make it so good. I don't wanna breathe, but I gotta know what's your fantasy. So whatever your fantasy is, Dipsea, which is this really sexy app full of hundreds of short, sexy audio stories designed for women by women. They have the scenario, the fantasy for you. So maybe it's with ludicrous or a second chance romance, or maybe you're into the fairies or the vampires or an adventurous vacation fling with a warrior Viking. Whatever tickles your fancy, they have a story for you, as well as sleep stories, wellness sessions, and Greek gods, and everything in between. So whether you're waiting in line at the DMV or you're just really annoyed with your family and need some me time, I highly recommend some Dipsea. So for listeners of the show, Dipsea is offering an extended 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/Sahara. That's 30 days of full access for free when you go to DIPSEA stories.com/Sahara. You can find that link in the show notes. I wouldn't say you need to dissolve the relationship, but you need to do what you're already doing and have time periods where you're alone to realize that even if the relationship were to end, that you would be okay.
Right.
And you are doing that.
Yeah. And I do do that. Yeah. Right. But that's just like a small example. I'm talking about it more in terms of like when people say,
should you make a decision based on that?
Exactly.
To me, the answer is, do you want that thing on the other side? Mm. So if for me, my biggest fear is putting my voice out there because I'm afraid of what people will say for me. But when I tune into what's on the other side of me speaking on stages and writing my book and having a podcast and making an impact, I want that thing so bad, but my biggest fear is sharing my voice and people ridiculing me. It's like, yeah, that's the fear to go into. But if my biggest fear is, there are so many fears that I just don't like. Getting hit by a car. Like, I don't need to go experience that fear to like relieve myself from it. But for example, I had a driving phobia for some years, that there was a time period that I felt dizzy and I was driving, and it created this trickle of like, what if I fainted while driving, which created a driving phobia. And then COVID happened. So I didn't have to drive. And then the driving phobia got worse and worse. But the only way I knew for me to get out of it is to start driving. Like, no amount of like visualization. I tried the hypnosis. I had to just start driving. And I would drive on a little local street with no one on it. And then I would drive a little bit more. I would drive to the grocery store. And then finally I drove on the highway. And now I fully drive across state lines. And I'm totally fine. I was driving around Europe by myself. But had I not gone into the fear, I wanted what was on the other side. I wanted the freedom of driving again. But did it give me like panic attacks to drive at that time? Yes.
Yes. And I like what you're saying about weighing the the result, right? Weighing what's on the other side. How bad do you want what's on the other side? And is that worth the risk of failing or having it not work? Because I want to have this experience. I want to make this music. I want to express this part of myself. And it doesn't, because at that point, that's going to supersede any negative outcome that might happen by you doing that. I just feel like that's a little bit different than having something be predetermined.
But there are some things you're lucky if you get to choose it. Right? There are a lot of things that your biggest fear that you don't get to choose and they happen to you.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's like, was that predetermined?
Is it predetermined or is it the energy you put towards it? It's a combination of both. You could look at it as, your soul, for example, let's say someone went through cancer, there could be the perspective of your soul chose to overcome this cancer to realize that you are not this disease and to be on the pathway of self-healing that happens as a result. Like one of our friends who overcame cancer and it set her onto writing books and help people heal cancer through food. But then there's also people who don't make it through cancer. And we don't know, was it their soul chose to go out that way? Was it there was like an intuitive hit that they got before that something was out of balance emotionally that they weren't listening to? I mean, there's so many factors and layers. And I think it's kind of unfair for me to speak about someone else's experience because I just don't know. I can only speak about it from my own. I would say the things that ended up being catastrophes in my life, there were little whispers I wasn't paying attention to before. And it needed to get to that point to listen. And I know for the friend of ours who went through cancer would say she was unhealthy, not listening to her body, completely out of touch, that she needed to have that type of wake-up call. I can't say that for every person because it's their own story to share. But ultimately, it's what serves you. Does it serve you to feel like you live in this world that any shitty thing can happen at any time for no reason and it just happens? And that's a very stoic philosophy. And that might be empowering for some people.
Yeah.
We're in a random universe. And then for other people who are more like storytellers like myself, it makes me feel better, maybe, to see the connection between things. But at the same time, like we've talked about, then I have these like crazy serendipities that I can't be telling myself a story of that are out of this world. For example, when I sat with plant medicine, I watched my grandparents' childhoods happen, which I talked about on a podcast before, that I witnessed my grandfather's childhood, my grandmother's childhood, my dad's childhood, my childhood. And I verified it was all correct. So it's stuff like that it's like, you can't make it up and you can't make up the parallels that we all had, that like there is something greater that is seeking to be healed. So how I see it is like consciousness wants to experience itself in every form. Consciousness is like, I'm bored up there.
Its full expression.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm bored. I'm infinity, so let me experience myself as bliss and rage and grief and ecstasy and sadness and excitement and like the full, like, let me touch every corner of experience. So let me play out every possible timeline that this experience can take. So every lifetime you might be a king and then you might be a peasant and you might be a mystic and you might be a farmer and you might be this. And it's just contrast. And it's like, that's all we're learning from. It's contrast. It's a ping pong. And even in the micro in our own human experiences, like we talked about this of like, you want to experience one thing and then you want to experience the opposite because you just want to know what it's like, like you let's say you want to date someone who's a musician. Now I want to date someone who's like a businessman. Now you want to date someone who's an architect. Now you want to date someone who's a constructor. It's like, you just want to experience opposites because it's through opposites that we find ourselves, of where do I stand? Am I here or am I there? Somewhere in between. Now, am I between this quadrant or that quadrant? And there's infinite quadrants.
Yeah, let's talk about a linear timeline versus the quantum timeline.
Yeah, so I would say the quantum timeline is the fact that, at any given moment, your soul is experiencing all potentialities right now. So when we even say past lives, it's actually all happening in the now. Like right now, there is a fractal of your soul that is maybe living in Peru. And there's a fractal of your soul that's maybe a single mom in Zimbabwe. There's a fractal of your soul that's like an emperor in China. Like all of these are levels of consciousness within you. And all potentialities are happening in the now. We're tuning into different timelines of them that our limited experience can only comprehend one at a time. So that's what the Akashic records are. In Sanskrit, they just call it the Akash. It's like infinite possibilities. And kind of in New Age, they look at it as like a library of all possibilities that I can tune into this layer and see. Like right now, there's the version of me that's living in London. There's a version of me that's living in LA. There's a version of me that's living in Portugal. There's a version of me that's living in Puerto Rico. Which versions of me do I want to experience right now with my consciousness? And then I'm attuning to that and becoming a match for that. And that becomes my reality. Then I begin to realize, well, that means if I can have this, if I don't have to live in LA, I could live in Portugal. What else can I do? I could live here. I could live there. And then I can experience different relationships. I can experience different abundance. And that's how we are jumping timelines, that it's getting rid of this like linear process of like, I need to work for 10 years and save this much money and have this much experience. And then I can live this life of like, oh, actually right now you can shift everything. And I mean, if there's anything that people have watched me this past year is like, you can shift really, really fast by jumping timelines in ways that don't even make sense. However, does that mean you don't take action? No, we're still on a physical planet. There's still action that needs to be taken. So that's what I see a quantum timeline. You can explain how you see more of a linear timeline.
A linear timeline is something that happens more sequentially. Like I'm in this experience right now. This is my job. This is what I do. This is my personality. This is my relationships. And I'm moving forward in a linear way, in a very sort of, I don't want to say basic, but just in a more traditional, practical way where, you know, I'm on a quarterly system. I have to pay quarterly taxes, and, you know, the holidays come every December, and then January is a new year, and then February, Valentine's Day, and then March, spring break happens, and then April, you know. And again, I want to define these because I think it's important for us to understand both, because I think both are really useful, right? If I'm spending all of my time in the Akashic field in my quantum experiences, and it's been a month and 2 months and 3 months, and I'm just experiencing all these different experiences because I can't decide, my bills are not being paid, I'm forgetting to do this, or time's passing by, and I'm not living in the present moment, right? I think what you're saying in the way of sort of progressing and evolving, because everything that you're doing right now is about transformation and evolving and achieving your highest potential. It's like you are that acorn that's going to turn into this mighty oak tree, right? And you're like, yeah, I have potential to do all these other things, but I know that I'm going to be that. And I don't actually know how high this tree is going to be, but I'm like going to go there, even though I don't know if I'm going to be 5 feet tall or 100 feet tall. Like I have no idea. I'm going, we're getting there. It's happening, right? That's one perspective, right? The other perspective is the seedling that's a blade of grass that's growing, and it's like, oh, it's going to take me a long time to get there. I'm just going to continue to just be in this space. And, oh, I'm growing into a blade of grass. Oh, I don't really know if I want to be a blade of grass, but am I going to be a blade of grass? Am I not going to be a blade of grass? Okay, yeah, no, I'm going to continue to grow, and I'm growing, and now I'm a blade of grass. Oh, okay, now I'm this blade of grass, but could I have been a different kind of grass? Could I have been, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just the linear pathway for me seems, I guess, a little bit more bland, but more practical. And I think it just gives people a little bit more structure, you know?
To me, you're never going to get there if you take that path.
Well, sure.
Like,
I mean,
I'm a grass and it's like it's going to take so much longer.
Yeah, it is. And I also think it's important for us to.
I think most people take that path, and that's why most people never live their full potential.
Yes. But so the purpose is, how do we find a balance between the two? Because I really do think we need both. I don't think we can be in this like quantum leap timeline space all the time, because you're constantly going to be wanting different things and experiencing all those versions of you. It's like, I want to go to well, maybe not Lisbon, but like, I want to go to Puerto Rico. I want to go to London. I want to go, like, all of those lives are great. Like, I want to have this experience. How long is it going to take? Like, what years are you planning on doing that? It's like, I'm going to be 50. Like, what's the plan here? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
I think it's like, are you attached to logic? Because if you're attached to having it be logical, then it's just not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
I never have asked myself that question. How long am I going to be anywhere?
Well, yeah, I mean, no, I know that.
Because if I do and I get into this, well, how long am I in the unknown? Then it's no longer the unknown.
Right. Because you're trying to now predict. But I think that that's my rub with the whole predestined thing, because I feel like that's like a different way of saying that I'm this blade of grass and like, no matter what I do, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be this blade of grass regardless of what I do. I can think.
Well, yeah, I think your destiny is it requires you leaping into the unknown and taking action to get there. Well, I don't think it's an inevitable.
Right. Which is what I liked what you said before, where you're saying there are different timelines. Like you get to make a different choice.
Yeah.
And I resonate with that. And I think that my rub, again, it's like, to me, I see the predetermined path as the blade of grass. You know?
I see it as, this is your ultimate expression. It can take you 10,000 lifetimes to get there, 1,000 lifetimes to get there, 100 lifetimes to get there, or bitch, you could get there in this lifetime.
Yeah, obviously.
And that's going to require you going straight into your fears, going into the unknown. Things are going to happen faster. It's not going to feel as slow and steady. And I don't know, maybe I'll like think about making the change in my life after Christmas.
Yeah.
That's not the energy you're going to get there in this lifetime.
Why do you think it happens quicker for some people than others?
It's not that it happens. It's that you choose to be on this timeline or not.
So there is some autonomy there.
Yes. Yes. 100%. You choose, it's going to happen as quickly as you allow it. Like, for example, for me, even prior, I was always a spiritual person. I grew up, always very connected, but I would say I was spiritual, I was traveling, and then, I got married and I kind of went on a more linear path. And that's what I needed at that time. I needed to sit down, live in LA, write my books, focus on my business. And I'm so grateful for that because it allowed me to have the abundance and the freedom and the security and these very earthly things that we need to have here on earth, that if I just meditated for the past 7 years, I would not be here right now, but who knows where I would be
I'm just
at the same time. So we just don't know, right before I actually was planning to go to Ecuador to sit with a San Pedro tribe for a few months and just study with them. So who knows, maybe I would have been a freaking shaman right now. So
you are a shaman.
But my soul chose to be in the world, to create this podcast and bring these conversations to the people who aren't in the jungle. I could have very easily just said, screw that, I'm going to live in Ecuador and Bali, and the community I was in is that community, but I decided to come into the matrix and kind of be a bridge. And now with, this divorce, and I'm like a free spirit again, and I'm like, I can live anywhere that I want. It's like, okay, how much do I want to have one foot in the 3D and one foot in the 5D? And it is this dance that I go through time periods that it's very focused on spirituality and mysticism and healing. And then I have time periods that I'm like launching my mastermind and, in the 3D. And it's like, and that's what I'm choosing. But again, like I have a friend of mine who she basically thought her mom had died. Her mom faked her death. Yes. And she came on this podcast and talked about it actually. So she thought her mom was dead, and she went into meditation for 1 year. And basically all she did all day was just meditate. And that changed the entire trajectory of her life and made her who she is right now. So you could say she was doing very little in this physical reality, but now everything that she does, including her career, comes from that year that she spent in meditation. Like Eckhart Tolle, was at this place. So it's like, I think we think action is only the like doing and the sending of the emails, but I don't think enough people actually sit in stillness and in spirituality. I think if we did that more, we would have higher levels of awareness that would allow us to quantum leap into the reality that we want, instead of maybe you work the job and you get micro lessons that maybe it would have taken you 10 years, that if you just sat in a 1 week meditation, you would have figured it out sooner.
Yeah, I think this is more along the lines of like what Joe Dispenza talks about, right? Being able to sort of create this energy for the quantum field to sort of bring what it is that you want, like experiencing it in the present moment, like you're saying, you're pulling from that place. And I think when you're really in tune with that place, you start to bring that in, to the field. My question to you is like, when you're in that space, well, it's hard because I'm like just saying, I'm going to ask you a contrarian question, but like we both have the same ideology, so maybe the question might not work. But what I was going to say is, how long do you spend in that space of, your friend spent a year, and one could say like, yeah, she needed that time, that space to create this world for her, right? You've been able to do it in months and sometimes just in quick moments because you're so tuned in. I think it's more a matter of tuning in. How do you tune in? You have to pick up the phone when that phone is ringing, that internal soul phone that we have, that is just, that phone is always ringing. Our soul is always calling. It's a matter of us picking up the phone and saying, hello, where am I being guided to today?
Do you hear that song playing in the background? That is my new song, Divane, that I produced and wrote using instruments where my mom is from, the south of Iran, which is considered Afro-Iranian because we're blended in with the different elements of East Africa, paired with a vibey Afro house beat. So I grew up listening to this tribal style of music, and I wanted to create a song that could modernize it and bring these ancient instruments into our lives, because the truth is we are all indigenous to Mother Earth. And when we hear these ancient instruments, it awakens something within us. So I am so excited to share music from my lineage with you and bring it to life in this brand new way. So you can stream Divane, which means to have gone crazy for the divine in Farsi, on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever you listen to music. And I'm curious, what does this song evoke in you? You can find the link to listen to it in the show notes, and I'm super excited to share a piece of my heart and lineage with you. And it doesn't even need to be 1 year. It's like you teach meditation. And for me, sitting with the medicine of Hape, which has been such a beautiful healer for me, is like sometimes in my life, I'll like, you're just so busy, you're all over the place, you're scattered. And then I'll like take a moment, and really what the Hape does for me, it just causes me to just really sit in meditation. It's pretty much just a tool for meditation. And then I will just like have such clarity and such awareness that just like reaffirms. And then all of my actions, it's like a domino effect, just come from this entirely different place. So that right there is a quantum leap of I have this realization in 10 minutes that then I'm on a different energy, making different decisions, making different actions, different beliefs. And it's like, and now I'm in a new reality right there. So it's like at any moment we can choose to come in, not react so quickly, hear the inner voice, and then respond from that place.
Yeah. We're not being reactive. We're acting from a place of wisdom, which ultimately is the ideal. I mean, when I do my practice, it fortifies me. It creates a clear channel, and I'm able to really tune into that. I guess I want to be like the advocate for the linear path, because I feel like the linear path in this world it's the underdog. You know what I mean? Because I see the linear path too as the patient route, the waiting, the in-between that we've talked about before. I love the idea of the quantum timeline.
But what do you see as like the linear path? Like just kind of like put your head down, focus on the daily grind, and eventually it will happen. Be patient.
Yeah, I feel like the linear path can sometimes be just very, to be colloquial, very basic. It's like you have a basic life. And interestingly enough, I've met people that basic life is their ultimate spiritual path. I mean, they really live that life. Like they're in their experience more than I am. You know what I mean? And this is my work. My sole mission on this planet is to be able to create awareness and connect with other humans and be of service and be more mindful and live in the present moment. I mean, it seems kind of, like a easy thing to do, but it's not, right? Being present is not, because we're constantly thinking about the past, projecting into the future. But some of these people that live this very, again, without, finding a better word, it's like a very basic existence, but they're so happy and present and content. And so to me, when I'm thinking of predetermined, past lives types of things, I'm going to take this couple that I'm talking about, for example. It's like they both have had pretty, basic lives, no real trauma, no real huge transformation. They have 2 kids, and they're the only couple I know that are actually happy and content and just like living a very basic, they go to Disney World, they take trips, they learn to speak a different language. It's just very wholesome to me. It feels.
I'm like, wow, people like that exist.
Yeah, it's only the one. You know?
I'm like, they're not asking like fundamental questions of reality on a daily basis, dying and coming back to life. And,
right? This is the thing. But to me, this is, I would see that initially as, and I would say to Tori, like, oh my God, like I could never live that life. Like, where you're working 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, and then on the weekends, and then you're living on a set salary, and like you're saving up to go on vacation. And it's, to me, that life, that sort of buttoned up existence freaks me out because it's so not what I'm accustomed to.
But are they genuinely happy, or have they just settled with, this is all I can get?
But this is, look at you. But
I don't know.
No.
They might be.
No, I know. But
of course, it's so out of my field that I'm like, I can't imagine.
I don't know. Like, maybe she really wants to be an artist and she's just like suppressing it. She's just a really good actress. Maybe he really like has a stealth career on the side. Maybe they both have some weird freaky shit going on that we don't know about.
You know, I asked this intuitive because I'm a very big soul.
Right.
You know?
Oh yeah. You are?
Yes.
What?
Yes. And my brother is not. He's like one of those, just like lived in Boston, still lives in Boston, works with my dad, watches the baseball, Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics sometimes, goes on trips with his friends, has fun, drinks a beer. And like, he's good.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no, brother, you need to go to Tony Robbins and unleash your power. You need to go to this. I like hired him a coach. I'm like, what do you really want in this lifetime? And I would coach him and, and he would tell me these ideas and stuff that he has. And then I would go back and he wouldn't take action on them. And I kept doing this. And I would get so frustrated. I'm like, I know he's capable of so much more and he's not living his full potential. And this intuitive is like, maybe he's just on a rest lifetime. That like, maybe the last lifetime he was freaking like Joan of Arc or something. And he's just like, yo, I just want to like watch some baseball, eat some pizza and like chill. Maybe that is enough for him.
Yeah.
Or maybe when he's 40, he's going to all of a sudden, he's like, we just don't know.
Yeah.
Only he can feel within himself. And it's like, I just question like people who say they're satisfied with that life. Are you actually satisfied, or are you just accepting this is what I'm capable of? Because I genuinely do believe in every child there is an artist and there is someone with bigger dreams. And I don't believe anyone grew up dreaming about like once a year go on a week-long vacation. That's going to be the highlight of my life. And the rest of it is just going to be doing the same thing day. I don't think any child dreamed of that. I believe that we all are artists and we all have these hobbies and we all have these unlocked gifts. Does that mean you need to go out into the world and share it on stages? No, but I have a hard time believing that someone does not have genuine interests.
Yeah, no, I think they have genuine interests. I just feel like that's not, from what I see as an outsider, it doesn't seem like it's part of their existence, right? And again, they seem happy, really nice, good-hearted,
always the ones that
people.
seem.
Well, that's the thing. And it's like
sounds like a Stepford Wives situation.
Yeah, like you and I will look at it and be like, what? This is weird.
Let's go to ayahuasca, see what's going on over there.
Like, what's really happening? And we may be right.
We may be right. Or maybe we're the crazy ones. We don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe her soul chose, you know what? I just want to keep a really routine, a really simple life. Or maybe she's dying inside and we don't know.
Maybe they both have midlife crisis and like get a divorce and it's just like she goes wild,
right?
And
that's the interesting thing back to
she moves to London, starts dating a bunch of hot guys with English accents.
I mean, that wouldn't be so bad for her. But that's the thing about, the free will versus destiny. Like, you know how they say it takes you as long as it healed as it needed to, right? It's like, how much of that is a story we tell ourselves because of how long it took?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, did it have to require you having a midlife crisis to realize you need to follow your passions? Or could you have just listened to your voice earlier on? It's like, ultimately, you can't go back into the past. I think it's a more empowering story to decide that's what you needed. But does that genuinely mean that's what your soul chose? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to defer to my Guruji, Tori. He always says that if you're constantly in crisis, you'll never have a midlife crisis. And I kind of like that. I mean, in the beginning, I'm like, that sounds a little aggressive. Like,
so he's saying go into the crises.
He's saying go into, throughout your life.
It's very tantric of him. Guru Tor.
Not wait for the thing to happen at that moment. And I think what happens typically, and I'm just going to stick to the topic of relationships, is that we watch the Hallmark Channel and we think that things need to be a certain way. We find the person, we get the house, white picket fence, 2.5 kids. We do the family vacations. And then what happens, and why I think we have such a high rate of divorce, is because we are conditioned to believe that relationships need to look a certain way. And we forget to ask the important questions of what am I really looking for in companionship? What am I bringing to the table? It's so easy for me to make a checklist for somebody else, but what's my checklist? What is my value to this experience? You know, it's like, I think when we start to really look at specifically relationships in that way of what is my value to this person's life and how am I living at my fullest potential so that I can inspire or encourage my counterpart to live their fullest potential. I think most people don't want to ask those questions. And most of us aren't even taught to be that way or to think that way. That's why I think also we have such a high rate of divorce, is because we're not taught, we're not encouraged to do what we need to do for ourselves.
No, we see relationships as, what role do you play in my life?
In my life, yeah. How are you going to make me feel better? How are you going to support me?
It's crazy. Right? I see these Hinge and these online profiles, and it's
Tell me.
It's all about like, I need someone who's this, and this, and provide for me this, and my this. And it's like, everyone's just like looking after themselves, you know? And it's like, a relationship is a choice. Like, you actually don't need to be in a relationship to survive in this day and age, you know? So it's just interesting because we're in this time that they're like, declare your needs and like have really high standards and stuff. But then it's like every person on their high horse, like, well, my standards are da-da-da-da, and you need to be da-da-da. And it's like, what are we giving?
Yeah. I read this article, what's it? Hold on. I don't want to spread fake facts. It may have been a post or an article. Maybe it was a meme. I'm not sure.
Quote, article, or meme. Same thing.
Same thing. But it was like, online dating has become a narcissist's dream pool or something.
I see that.
So I was very obviously drawn in by this, just even just the title. I didn't read the caption or whatever. I just saw that and it sort of struck a chord. And I'm like, wow, this is a really interesting dynamic to think. It's like it, because here's the juxtaposition, as I always like to point out. It's important for us to be self-sufficient and self-caring and love ourselves. How do we do that without being selfish? It's important for us to have self-confidence. How do we do that without being narcissistic, right? Because like let's define narcissism. It's from a Greek mythology, right? So Narcissus was the son of the river god. I can't remember his name. And
Narc something.
Yeah, something.
A lot of narco.
Yeah.
Like Pablo.
Such a good song.
Yeah.
And the mother of Narcissus was Laramie. She was a nymph. His mom was a nymph. And so the story is that Narcissus saw his reflection in the lake and became so enamored and in love with his reflection that he just like wasted away and died because he just was so obsessed with himself, right? And so we take this idea of when we're confident, it's important for us to really appreciate ourselves and look at ourselves and be proud of ourselves and really encourage ourselves in that way. But at what point does it become narcissism, right? At what point do we go into the state of, what can you do for me?
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So the holidays can bring up a lot. Some people spend time with their families, some people on their own, some people have a lot of memories come up, and some people are having their first Christmas or Hanukkah with their loved ones. So wherever you are in your journey, it's really important to take this reset time for the collective to give yourself a moment of self-reflection. Because let's be real, this year has been a lot. And I find that when I kind of slow down and get help, especially with therapy, I'm able to process some of the things that are just going on in my life that I don't really take the time to decompress. And then I feel like what I'm feeling underneath it all. So maybe you just started a new relationship and you're feeling nervous about getting your heart broken again. Or maybe you're having a tough time with your dad because he's not emotionally available the way that you would like. These things we kind of like sly off and we make ourselves think that it's okay, even though it's really bothering us. So sometimes talking it through allows us to feel better about it. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, I highly recommend BetterHelp. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire and you get matched with a licensed therapist. And you can also switch therapists at any time with no additional charge. So it's super easy and you can do it from wherever you are traveling. So since this is the season of giving, give yourself the gift of what you need with BetterHelp. So you can get 10% off your first month with betterhelp.com/Sahara. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Sahara. And you can find that link in the show notes. Bringing in, it's funny you're talking about this and we're in this like unknown free will conversation. We've talked about narcissism now, but like here we are, this is very Joe Rogan of us. I'm like, how do we bring it back?
Yeah, bring it back.
But it's funny because last night on YouTube, I randomly ended up on a video about narcissism. And she was talking about how narcissists as children basically couldn't cope with the unknown. And it was like their way of dealing with whatever uncertainty, whatever chaos, whatever trauma that was happening in their lives is to create this like overt sense of self that helps them get through it, you know? So it's like narcissism is a response to an inability to be in the unknown.
Yeah.
And it's like, instead, if we can just say everything is unknown and I might die and I don't really exist and this personality that I have is ever changing. And if you want evidence of it, look at where you were 5-7 years ago. And then it's like when you're like that, it's like you kind of just can't be a narcissist because it's like you don't actually exist. Like I think about that all the time. I'm like, I am not even real. You know, that because I actually had this fear that came up in my medicine ceremony because my dad was for sure a narcissist, but that's part of having Asperger's is like you just can only really think about yourself. And it's not that they're trying to, but it's just they can't read empathy. And that's a huge part of what narcissism is. You just can't read what other people are doing. So I grew up with a dad like that. So like a deep fear in me. So I went empath. There was always empath narcissist, you know, and in relationships, I'm the empath. So, but then this empath fear of mine is like, well, what if I'm actually the narcissist and no one's really telling me, you know? And I like went into this rabbit hole of like, fuck, maybe I am, you know, the one. And I think it is an important contemplation of like, we all have elements of the narcissist.
Yeah. I think we do.
We all do.
Absolutely.
And it's our way of like protecting ourselves from the uncertainty and from the rejection and abandonment and all of these like cruel things that happen in life.
Also the fear that we are nothing.
Right.
No one.
It's like, no, I am someone. I matter. I matter. It's like, like Donald Trump, you know, it's like, he's a case in point of whether you like him politically or not, like we see the guy's a narcissist, you know, like.
And nobody can debate that.
No one can debate that. And it's like, I'm curious what happened in his childhood, but he had to obviously like really like, and it's like, this is an interesting conversation of like, where do we draw the line between self-love and narcissism?
That's what I'm saying.
Because a lot of the things that we're doing for self-love are like, you are worthy, you are amazing, I am amazing, I am this. And you could see that as narcissistic. However, the difference that I see is the people who are doing these affirmation practices are often the people who really lack self-love.
Yeah. And I think that the
narcissists don't go in the mirror doing positive affirmations.
No. I think that the discernment comes, I think it's more of a delineation of narcissism versus self-confidence, right? Because I think it's important for us to have self-confidence and to feel empowered. I think with narcissism, we let that self-confidence turn into overconfidence.
But it's not, it's actually a deep insecurity masked with a confidence. Narcissists are not confident at all.
Oh, you're saying, no. I'm saying that they are two different things.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's creating like a delineation, right? So it's like two separate things.
Yeah. It's a mask of confidence.
Right. And yeah, like how do you identify that? And I think there was like a questionnaire a couple of years ago It might be like an online quiz now that you can take to see if you're a narcissist.
See, a narcissist would never take an online quiz. Like, I'm like, Dad, here's an article about science of narcissism. He's
nope,
like,
this is true.
Won't read it.
Yeah, because it's like, no, this is not me.
The meme you sent me today with the Donald Trump, it's like when you tell your parents about your childhood trauma.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know
I have no recollection of that memory. Like, such a narcissist thing to say. Yeah.
I'm just
that never happened.
That never happened.
You're making that one up. That's a you thing. You got to go work on that. But because it's like a narcissist never looks within themselves. Like if you're listening to this podcast, you are likely not a narcissist. You know, I just want to let that burden go.
Don't even look. And
they're not asking these questions. Only not. Fucking empath people pleaser codependents like us. Yeah, you're on this side of the spectrum, honey. Welcome. You matter. You are worthy. You're enough. Believe in yourself. Yeah.
I love that we went straight into the people pleaser aspect of us, the people pleaser empath.
But the dance, it's always the two. And it's like everyone is always one. It's like no one is 50. It's like we try to, like I would say now we're not people pleasers, but like that was our end of the spectrum of like, we're that bitch who like, you need something, we're here. And that's why we get along, because we are codependent, you know, but we're both like willing to just give a lot. So it works. But then if one of us was just like, you know what, I'm just going to take, then it would start to not feel so good anymore. Unless we had unresolved childhood trauma. And then it would feel like what we're used to, which is what happens in relationships of like, you're so used to the parent being a narcissist and you being their provider, that's how you know love.
Yeah. But I think that to go just a little bit into that, I think we have those people that fulfill those roles in our lives too. You have those people where you're that person they call all the time and tell you all their problems, and they don't ever say, how are you? Or like, what's going on with you? Or they might say it in a passive way. They're not really interested, right? And then you have the people where it's like, you're more that person. You're like, I'm going to tell you about this, this, and this, and this, and this. And then maybe they don't want to share.
It's like a web.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. I think it's important to have that balance too.
But I think bringing it back to like free will.
Let's come back.
And the unknown is like, these are all ways of us coping with the unknown. Yeah. So I'm curious, do you think it's destiny for us to have been born with like a narcissistic parent? Both of us have narcissistic dads. Do you think that was part of our destiny, that our souls chose it? I would say for me, yes. I believe my soul chose my dad, and I saw it clearly in my ceremony because he's very intelligent, very organized, very disciplined, very hardworking, all traits that I got. But he does not believe in spirituality at all. Very linear, if you can't prove it with facts and data, I don't freaking believe it. And also with the narcissism piece, it was all about him that I had to learn how to read people really well, which made me become very intuitive, very like able to read between the lines, able to read the footsteps, able to feel just by the tone of the conversation where it's going to go and where the rest of our night is going to go. That for me, to be able to share spirituality with the world, I needed the hardworking and discipline that I got from him, as well as the juxtaposition of being an empath with a narcissistic parent, so I could have the best of both worlds. So I'm curious, do you believe your soul chose it, or do you think it just happened and you made the best of it?
No, I think I did choose my family. I think I did choose my dad, and to have that experience and to sort of learn that dynamic for me. My dad's an artist. You know, he's opposite of your dad, right? It was artistic, very emotional. He's a Cancer. He's like a Cancer just like me. And our birthdays 2 days apart, and July would come and it was always his birthday, his party. You know, it's like,
it's my birth month.
Yeah, it's my birth month, right? And I think I really saw him take the spotlight, and it always made me feel like there's not enough room for me, right? It was always like his feelings were more important when my parents divorced, because I stayed with my dad. His experience was always more important. His processing of my mom leaving was always more important than how I felt, right? So I was always comforting. I was always coaching him. I was always like his emotional, Kleenex. You know what I'm saying? So that role in me really created that deep empath, because I'm also very nurturing, and I'm also a very caring person.
And then what ended up being your brand, Radically Loved.
Right.
Which you got from that.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think it served that purpose. Now with regard to like my relationship dynamic, it made me want somebody completely opposite of that.
And that was your free will.
Right. Right.
You could have done maybe the unconscious destined path of like, let me just choose another narcissist.
Which were my two relationships as a teenager, right? It was that same kind of dynamic.
I think that's what the healing journey shows us, that there is free will. Because by healing and having this awareness, we can then quantum leap into new realities.
Yeah.
And at the same time, did our soul priorly choose that we were going to have that healing? Because we could take the super quantum perspective of like, we're in the matrix, okay. And it's like, there is this like higher form of consciousness that's like playing us like video games, and we think we're making these decisions and we're not. So even like the moment that you had the healing and the moment that you had the realization, the moment you had the conversation, all of that was predetermined on this pathway. And it could be that. However, the way that it's designed is to make us at least feel that we have a free will. So I think if it's designed to make us feel that we have a free will, it's important to play into it and to play into the human experience. Because if I take this really detracted view of life, then I'm not really living anymore.
Yeah, you're not having the full experience.
And then ultimately, I don't know. So then maybe I would say, well, it's all free. Everything is destined. So let me just like sit in this hot tub forever and just like be my matrix self. And then maybe like I would die and God's like, the fuck you were doing? Like you're supposed to climb mountains and write books and tell stories. And you just sat in the hot tub the whole time. It's like, I thought it was the Matrix, It's like, you don't know until it's too late.
Right. Oh, God. It's like the Don't Look Up movie, remember? How everybody just
didn't believe it. Yeah.
Or that, did they not believe it, or did they chose to just be in that experience and let the asteroid come and just be in that dinner party?
Well, I think that's what being human is we don't know. There are these really big questions, and then you just like wonder what's for lunch.
Yeah.
It's like, and back to deciding what nail color I'm getting, because it's like but it's important to dance in both.
Yeah. It's like the aliens, like nobody's even talking about the fact that the government just confirmed that they're,
because these things are so big that it's like, now what do you do with it? I think that's what we struggle with. Cause it's like, yeah, there are aliens. And it's like, I guess we just know that now. So I still have to pay my taxes, and I still am worried about whether he's going to text me. And it's like, all the things are still here. And it's like, and that's the beauty of being human, is like, we can be in both dimensions.
Yeah.
And I think what we're missing in our society is these contemplations. Like back in ancient times, we spent a lot more time. Like that was like, we didn't have TV. It's like we would sit under a tree. Like I remember I did this past life regression. I saw myself under this tree in ancient India by the Ganga. And I was like a rishi. And I was like teaching, there's like 8 little scholars, and I was like teaching them about Vedic wisdom. And it's like, that's what we used to do. Like Gurukul. Everyone went to these types of mystery schools. Every culture had them. Whereas now we don't. And I feel like that's why we're really struggling, is like we stop contemplating these bigger questions. And then when you stop asking yourself these bigger questions, then the little things feel really big.
Yeah.
And you start to get really anxious over them. Yeah. And that's why I think there's such an epidemic of anxiety and depression
100%.
That I think if we contemplated these questions, is there free will and destiny? It's like, the little things wouldn't bother us that much.
Yeah. And I think this is my biggest issue with, in the world that I'm in I love neuroscience and I totally geek out on it. And, with all the findings that fMRIs are doing about what the brain is doing when you are meditating and you are in a state of contemplation, et cetera. But I think that the biggest missing component is spirituality. I think that component needs to be an and it needs to be an and to all this knowledge that we know, because we don't know everything. I think, with this specific topic, talking about mental health and anxiety and depression and addiction, even when we're talking about the brain and the mind, we can't have a healthy conversation about it without talking about spirituality, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. Because I think these conversations, just like you're saying, are so important to have. And I think that they're part of something so ancient that we know internally that really creates a level of filling. We used to sit around a fire. We used to have these communal gatherings, and we used to dance, and we used to pray together and eat together and talk together, and villages would help raise children, and it was a more communal. Like, we're so disconnected now. We're on our phones. We're alone on our phones.
Even in too much therapy and stuff, it could get us so identified with our problems that and if we don't have spirituality in tandem to like the very important inner child healing. I remember we were talking about AA the other day, and you were saying how like spirituality is like the biggest component, because if you don't connect to something greater of a divine force helping you, like addiction will continue in your life. And I remember for myself last year after my divorce of like, holy shit, my life is in this complete unknown. I'm in this place of just like so much pain and sadness. And I'm in Egypt. And I'm in these temples of Isis, seeing ancient hieroglyphics that are potentially 10,000 years old, scripted on the wall. I'm standing where the pharaohs stood. I'm in these like ancient corridors. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this world is so big and time is so endless. And I'm here having this such a small experience. Think about thousands of souls that have sat right here in contemplation over millennia. And the same stories repeat themselves. Like, I'm looking at the walls of these hieroglyphics and I'm seeing the story of the afterlife, and how, I don't know if you know the story of Ma'at.
I think you told me when you came back.
Yeah, it's basically the story of that when we die, our soul is weighted against a feather of how much heaviness, our hearts, how much heaviness are we holding onto in our hearts? Is it lighter or heavier than a feather? And if it's lighter than a feather, we're not holding on to resentment and anger and, all of the things that feel very real to us in our human experience. We feel justified in the anger. But if we can let go of them, then we move on to the afterlife and the next experience. However, we hold on to it, we stop incarnating and we go. And then it's like this beautiful cycle, and it shows like this snake that approaches you. And it's like we all have this like snake within us. And like that snake can become higher consciousness, or that snake can become our destruction. The snakes can be both. And I'm just sitting here and I don't know all the stories of the hieroglyphs, but they're speaking to me. Like, they are telling me the story in the way that my consciousness needed to receive them. And I'm just like, wow, like this cycle of life, death, good, evil, like why do bad things happen to good people? Like, these fundamental questions are so age old. And when you can tune into the fact that it didn't just start with you, and it's not just you, and it's not going to end with just you, it like alleviates this like loneliness and heaviness that we sometimes feel when like bad things happen to us, that we're like, it's just me. Like, I'm the only one who could possibly be dealing with it this freaking bad. And it's like, oh no, like this is just human existence. And when you connect to spirituality, you realize that it's for something greater. Otherwise, it wouldn't keep happening. It wouldn't keep showing up in these different ways if there wasn't something to this. Like, there's something so fundamental about every human must suffer in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Every culture and if you don't, religion, you'll do a vision quest to suffer. You have to suffer in this lifetime. It's where all of the good juju comes from. And so when you have these contemplations, then it's no longer suffering, it's initiation. So that to me is like, when I'm so caught up in the drama of life and I tune into these like greater themes of consciousness, it just takes me out of the experience. And then I'm so grateful to like be a human in this lifetime and able to feel that.
I love that. I ditto. I think it's such a beautiful way to look at life and to contemplate life. And obviously, like, we have these experiences and you and I have these conversations often, maybe more often than the normal person. But it's just, I think, so much a part of our desire to really fully experience life in every capacity and facet that we can. And I think that if you really want to be connected to your life and you want to relieve your suffering, this is the way to do it. It's like the only way out is through.
Yes.
You know?
And I believe that's why we're in this time that spirituality is coming back to the mainstream and mystery. Like even I have a mystery school, Rose Gold Goddesses, and like people are coming together to sit in circle and ceremony and do ritual and go back to ancient sites. And it's all happening right now for a reason, that this is a renaissance of that frequency coming back to earth, because we have been living in these very 3D linear times with the Industrial Revolution and many wars and bloodshed and the way that religion has taken over and patriarchy has taken over, that I think we're finally like in this like age of Aquarius having this like pendulum shift right now. And we're just at the very beginning of it. And I think that that's why like those of you who are listening right now, like you are part of the pioneers, the way showers that are guiding this way. So, I mean, if you're especially listening to this deep in,
I know, right?
You're a special soul. So trust that, because not everyone is having these contemplations. And if you are, there is something there for you. So yeah, with that, thank you so much for listening. I'm excited to drop in deeper with you. And I mentioned I have a mystery school of Rose Gold Goddesses. I will link that in the show notes as well as Rosie's website and her meditations. And also, if you'd like to drop into my womb meditation, which is a meditation you can do to access the wisdom of your womb, I'm sharing it absolutely for free. So just leave a review for this podcast. Let me know how you liked it. If you want more existential, big philosophical conversations like this and any contemplations you have that you would like us to jam about, leave it in the review. I read every single one. It's like the highlight of my week. And just take a screenshot of that review and email it over to me at sahara@iamsahararose.com. You can find that link, the mystery school, and everything else I mentioned on the podcast in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.
Trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your eyes and listen. Surrender, let go. So trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your